All right, welcome back to another edition of WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update. We're just excited to dive into electric vehicles today and some of the different trends we're seeing in that area. And I mean, it seems like every day we're seeing more news about electric vehicles. I think I was heard on the radio on my way into the office today about Ford. I think they're going to hire thousands of more people in Kentucky and Tennessee to build electric vehicles. So it's just amazing kind of how fast we've been hearing about electric vehicles and how things have picked up. Just welcome to the show. Mike Gast, co host, is here from Hawaii again. And I see he's got the people behind him that never seem to move, but
Still
they
just
look like
sit
they're
there.
having a good time. And then we got Gene Zanger. And Gene, I guess I'll let you introduce yourself just a little bit, maybe give us a few details about your park in California.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Hi, Mike. Um, yeah, Casa de Fruta. We're in the just off of the Central Coast. We have a
Hmm.
RV park, 300 site RV park. We've got a restaurant, a fruit stand, which is really the soul of the operation, a wine tasting. We're a bonded winery. We have a small train and carousel for the kids. We've got a 24-hour Chevron station. And right now we're playing host to the Northern California Renaissance Fair for the next 5 weekends. So we got a
Wow.
lot of different activities out here. Um, I've been a state RV board member and also was with Arvik on their board in the early 2000s. So just been a park operator. It's a family business, started well before I was around, and we're just trying to continue the legacy.
Yeah, and you're going to be part of a special panel, I believe, at Arvik this year, right? That's going to be kind of talking about EVs.
Yes,
Uh,
and I'm very much looking forward to that. It's I think on Tuesday of the Arvik convention.
Yeah, so that should be interesting.
So, Gene, we've talked before about electronic vehicles and what's been going on at your campground. It's obviously top of mind these last few months with the interest that's come up from manufacturers, and now they're promising to have things, the actual American vehicles rolling off the
Hmm.
line by the end of the year, including trucks capable of towing. So all of a sudden, we've got campgrounds really having to scramble a little bit and consider what that means for their parks. And it's not just the lone Tesla rolling through asking to charge for a few hours anymore. It is campers that will be showing up with EVs and expecting to be serviced. Uh, you're way ahead of the game because you've been doing this for a while. You've had, I think you said 20 stations on your behind your Chevron station. Setting.
Let me share the photo while you
Yeah.
talk. Keep talking and I'll try to get
So
this
there's
going.
so Gene's got some experience at least with the Tesla stations as to the demand, and of course you're sitting there in just the right part of California for this. And as the photo shows there, you can see pretty popular spot, to stop and fuel up, recharge your EV at Gene's location, and that's partly because you've got so much other things to do there. They can plug it in and go eat. They can go to the fruit stands. They can take part in the events. So that's really nice for your situation. Plus, you've learned a lot. So, how long have they been? How long have those units been in place, Gene?
The 20 Tesla superchargers have been there about 2.5 years now. So we're real fortunate. Tesla identified our location as a pass-through point where people were going to need to recharge, and it works great for us as an amenity so that people will stop by. The Teslas, if you're not familiar, inside the vehicle, they have a screen, and that screen will give them information about the amount of charge that they have left. And it'll also tell them where the next stop is and if there's space available, et cetera. So it just drives them right to the location. So that's been a real big benefit.
Yeah.
So, how does the deal with Tesla work?
Well, it's different. I think it's different for different locations. Many locations, like hotels, would just say, "Hey, if you want to come in and put a site, that's great. That's going to be an amenity for our guests. When we worked with them, we said, hey, this is a piece of property that is relatively unused, but we do use it for some parking. We know that when we invite people on the location, we're going to have to maintain and keep things clean, et cetera. So forth to have an annual rent number that kind of took care of that. Again, we were happy to have them on here, but we would never have them on for free. How's that?
So early on, when we did our previous stories for rvtravel.com, you shared some photos with me because people just don't seem to be willing to accept the fact that a Tesla automobile will pull a trailer around. And you had shared a couple of photos that you had taken at your location where people were showing up with small either teardrops, or one way I think was actually pulling an Airstream Bambi,
Airstream.
which is a pretty good load for that. So they're out there and they want to do it.
Absolutely.
So are you seeing more of that now?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about Tesla and how our location is really kind of so proximate, so much ground zero, if you will, for electric vehicles. The Fremont Tesla facility is about 45 miles away. So we see the car carriers coming through our location daily, and they're taking cars through the rest of the country because they'll come out through our pass, and they'll go out through Nevada and north. So we see them on a regular basis. We've seen the Tesla truck, the semi truck, because it's done testing out here on Pacheco Pass. And then of course, Tesla has, I believe it is their number one market is Northern California. So there's a lot of interest with Tesla. Any kind of electrification, I'm talking about it out here in California, adjacent to Tesla. There's a lot of excitement over it and stuff. It's going to have to be calibrated all the way throughout the country. Your guests will let you know, hey, this is something we need and we've got to get going. I would recommend for all RV park owners to start thinking about it, because it looks like, over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a doubling, tripling, quadrupling of electric vehicles. And of course, our market is a part of that auto gadget group that likes the new things and wants to get involved in it. So that'll be happening pretty quick.
So you told me before, Gene, that you've got plans to bring the chargers into the campground operation. What's that going to look like?
Well, we're working on that, and I'm going to get a little winded here on this conversation. We've been trying to put in chargers for other vehicles other than Tesla for a few years now. In fact, we started talking about that before Tesla came, and started talking to different contractors and folks that could put them in. There's grants through the state. There's grants through some of the local jurisdictions, as well as Electrify America, which is the VW Dieselgate settlement case that requires that VW go out there, and there's money available for chargers out there. Those different companies, many of them will put them in for free. Many of them will put them in for a little bit of a cost, but then they control the charger itself. They'll have any revenue that's off of that, which isn't a whole lot, honestly. As a gas station or fuel station dealer, I can tell you it's not going to pay the bills, at least in its current form, like the Chevron does. But we continue to look for those electrical chargers. We think the long-term plan is going to mesh well with our solar field. So we just put in a 4-acre solar field, and since we have solar, there's something in solar called the renewable energy credit. That renewable energy credit allows us to go out on a third-party market that's regulated by the state and the Western Region electrical grid, and sell those green credits, if you will, for a rate. And that rate, let's say it's somewhere between $10 and $15 per unit. So that's good. That's something we can get. But we're also aware of another program, the low carbon fuel standard credit, which is about 10 times the reimbursement per unit. And so if we were able to put in electrical chargers, charge those vehicles, then we could take advantage of the low carbon fuel standard credit. The reason I bring that up is that's what Tesla does. So Tesla is able to offset some of the cost and charges of fueling by participating in the low carbon fuel standard credit. Park owners are going to be able to do that if they have a solar installation. They'll be able to have an income stream off of their solar if they own that electrical charging station.
Uh, I think on the campground owners end, maybe the electric vehicle chargers are great. I think a lot of people are having. Do you have people try to come in and hook up to your pedestals in your campground, or do they recognize that you have the chargers and pretty much leave your pedestals alone? I guess.
No, we're on something called PlugShare and other third-party apps that identify our location as an RV park as a place to get a charge. And so when people come in, there it's not always the folks that are on the long haul trips. It's just they just need a little bit more charge to get where they're going, because when they put it into our 50 amp pedestal, it's going to take them a while to get a
Mhm.
solid charge. So they'll go to the restaurant, they'll take some time, and if they come back in an hour or two, they typically have enough for where they want to go.
I think that's the one of the problems I know when we talk to park owners that they're experiencing is that I just read one like a week or two ago, a frustrated owner, they had like a rental RV and a guy pulls in with a Tesla they're renting the RV, but he unplugs the RV and then plugs in his Tesla. And it didn't sound like this owner had his sites metered or had anything factored in for that. So I think that's kind of frustrating owners, I guess. Have you heard that from other park owners, or that that's a concern? I guess what does the industry do to avoid that kind of stuff?
Well, I think what may happen, and boy, I'd like to hear what Wade Elliott thinks from Utility Supply Group, but I believe there's going to be, separate in the near future, separate charging areas and separate charging infrastructure to charge your Tesla or any rigs or electric tow vehicles that are there. Because in most parks with whether it's 30 or 50 amp, they're only going to be able to get a little bit of a trickle charge in there. So
Yeah.
that's an open question.
So,
Yeah,
Gene,
and
how long does it take on an RV pedestal to fully charge a car that limps in and is almost out of juice?
I'm gonna defer on that, and we'll talk to Dr. Google about that. I know that they can get enough in an hour to get where they need to go, but it might take 2 or 3 hours. In a home installation, where they're just doing the 220, I don't know what the amperage is on that. They always say, you charge it overnight, so that's a number of hours. Um, we haven't had anybody stay here longer than about 2.5 hours charging when they wanted to charge.
And what type of units are the Tesla units? Are those the rapid charge?
Yeah, all the Tesla, they did a smart thing, and they had the resources to do it. So all those are considered superchargers. I think they started out about 125 kilowatts. They went to 150, and they might have some up at 175 on the chargers. So those guys, they can charge anywhere from, I'll say, 15 to 30 minutes. Usually gets them enough to where they want to go.
Wow.
I would I would like to note right here, and I think we forgot to mention it. I had mentioned in our advertising for the show that Mike Sokol was going to join us, and hopefully he jumps in here, even if he's a little bit late. But obviously, we had an issue getting Mike on, which I'm sure he could have answered some of these technical questions too. He did have a recent article in he was at the Hershey show, which is a large
Mm.
RV show in
It
Pennsylvania,
is.
and he did have a recent article where he was quoted, and I will put the link to that article in the text box in the comment section in our Facebook page so that people can read that. That had quite a bit of information on EV charging for the industry as well. But it's just, I guess, throughout the industry, I guess, Gene, do you meter your sites at your campground? Like, are your sites metered?
We don't meter them, no.
And I think, that might be a problem, an issue too, is a lot of these people, maybe a lot of the campground owners don't have those metered sites, or they aren't keeping track of their electrical costs. Do you get that sense, or is that something more owners are taking a look at?
Well, let me say a few things about that. I think the regulatory utilities get very anxious
Yeah.
if somebody resells their product. So
E-
that is an issue. So when we're very careful when somebody has come into the RV park to say that, well, it's about $5 an hour, $8 an
Okay.
hour for them to stay there if they want to charge, because we can't meter or sell that. So that's going to be an issue with all the different utilities that parks address. But I think it's fairly common that you can't resell that unless you're metering and you've got agreements in place and your meter is up to code.
I would imagine that might depend on your park's location, I guess, because I do
Yeah,
know that some parks meter their sites, and I do know more owners are interested in finding out how to do that or installing that, or they're trying to build their energy cost into the cost of their campsites. Um, and I have to imagine more park owners will at least look into it, especially if electric vehicles start showing up and plugging in, I guess.
absolutely. And that's a question for the local utility to determine what their conditions or standards are in order to get that set up.
Yeah,
Um,
So
yeah.
do you, Gene, do you see this in general over the country, not just in your location, but do you see electronic vehicle charging as a real revenue stream, or should owners look at it like a swimming pool? It's just an amenity that you have to have.
well, that's a great question, and that's going to continue to evolve as time goes
Mhm.
on. Right now, I believe if somebody having one of the electrical vehicles charged from zero to full charge is going to be, and I'll just take a big number, less than $10. And there's really not a whole lot of profit in that. Not to mention the fact that somebody's going to be there for an extended period of time. So it's not analogous to a gas fuel situation, but things may change as demand grows and the infrastructure needs to be supported. You're going to see the utilities have to pay for those costs, and of course, legislation might arise that changes that economic dynamic. But right now, if somebody comes in, there's really not you're essentially paying for the cost of the electricity, and by law, you're regulated to do that. So that's kind of where it is.
Uh, yeah. So I guess, what do how do campground owners? I know some campground owners are getting frustrated because, they'll go out and they'll see an electric vehicle plugged into a pedestal, and obviously they didn't even know they were plugging into a pedestal. I guess that's more on kind of a rule area, right? That park owners just kind of have to establish rules and kind of make their campers aware of what they're allowed to do and not do, I guess, on their sites.
Yeah, and again, whatever their price per kilowatt hour is, and if they have a sense of what it takes to fill up a car and it's $10, I mean, I think you have to charge. I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. You may have to charge again for the time unless you're metered. But again, you have to check with the local utility. I think you want to welcome it, because if you can take care of that guest who has this unique vehicle, there's an opportunity there. So you want to try to make it work and not say, hey, what are you doing? You're stealing my electricity. Let's invite them in, bring them, make them part of the party, and but learn. Yeah, you're gonna have to learn what it takes. If the article that you referenced earlier, Ford saying that by 2030 they expect that 30% of the passenger truck, light duty truck market is going to be electric. Well, they're going to find a way to tow. And, if they're already doing it with a Tesla, they're doing the teardrops. Well, those trucks somehow are going to have the power to tow trailers, and they're going to need to be taken care of. Just like I don't expect to not be charged when I go into a gas station, it's going to become, well, how much? And I think park owners just have to be savvy enough to make that work for themselves.
I know we've seen a lot of innovation, I think, on the vehicle side of the
Yeah.
equation with Colorado Teardrops is the one that comes to mind. There's a company out of Boulder, I believe, Colorado Teardrops, that's come up with a concept vehicle that has a set of batteries in the bed of the trailer, which fully charged feed the tow vehicle if it's an electronic truck, for instance. So the truck can be feeding off the batteries on the trailer to extend range. So the innovation is going to come along. It's just so early in the game here, and really we don't know what the perfect setup looks like on a campground yet, because there's so many different scenarios that could come in to a campground as these vehicles expand. If somebody pulls in with a electronic vehicle truck towing a traditional trailer, well, they're going to want to plug in the trailer and they're going to want to plug in the truck. And if they've, God forbid, show up soon with a electronic truck and an electronic, a battery base like Colorado Teardrops is making, well, they're going to want to recharge both of those. And all of a sudden, you've got a problem just on the power pedestal side of things. I know a funny story, kind of a funny tragic story that's popped up on an owner's chat board I saw last week, where somebody had their RV in place on a campground. They put it up on a peer-to-peer rental site like Outdoorsy, and they rented their rig to a newbie that wasn't familiar with RVing at all. That that newbie shows up on the campground, and the trailer's sitting there all plugged in, air conditioner running, and they pull in with their Tesla and they pull the plug on the RV so that they can charge their vehicle, and then they come to the store and complain because the air conditioner went off in the RV because it's not plugged in anymore. So that's the level of complexities we're dealing with, and the lack of knowledge. And you're right, there's I'm sure there's a lot of owners out there that don't want to think about this. Some of them probably haven't even finished converting their parks to 50 amps yet. There could be a mixture of 30, 50 going on, and they know that they need to get it up to 50 amps because that's what everything's going to need in the near future. And now all of a sudden, here come the EV vehicles that want to plug in and charge. And you're looking at what could be a really major revamp of an electrical system on an electrical grid on the campground.
Yeah. You bring up, I'm sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be amazing to see how park owners, adapt to this. And like what you said, Gene, I don't think you can ignore, you don't want to ignore this. I mean, the Ford Lightning, their electric vehicle, the orders are just skyrocketing for that thing. So I think there's definitely consumer demand for electric vehicles, and the industry doesn't want to alienate that audience. So.
Mike, getting back to a couple of points you said, the innovation and the speed with which this happens is going to dictate what park owners are going to need to do. So, I'm old enough to remember the gnashing of teeth that took place with cable TV having to be installed, and the angst related to Wi-Fi, and a few other things, and upgrading the pedestals. So, it's one of those things. It's going to be a competitive advantage for you if you're able to accomplish these things and provide that service, and you're ahead of the game. First one in wins. And I think too, you probably want to look to some of the other larger players in the market, be that the Jellystones and the KOAs and the Northfields and others that are going to be out there and actively upgrading and enhancing and charging for it, and making sure that they've got the biggest and the best, so that the guests can take advantage of that. It's an opportunity, no question, and it's happening fast.
I've been really surprised by where the early adopters are coming from. I know in my history with KOA, just this year I saw that Mitchell, South Dakota, which is a small KOA in the sort of the eastern side of South Dakota, they added a charging station. Now they've also got a windmill there that generates electricity, so they're pretty innovative to start with, but a very small campground making that investment. And the same with Mackinac, Michigan, the KOA campground up there has added it. And to your point earlier, there's I think there's a slowly growing trend for solar farms, because some campgrounds have the land for that.
Yeah.
And they can pencil it out with the grants and with the tax incentives to make sense. And typically I've seen, even in the past year, 3 or 4 campgrounds that I know of that have flipped over to powering their entire park off their solar farm.
Yeah.
Typically seasonal parks in the north.
Well, there's a story up on our feed today where a park owner's benefiting from the solar. The community had installed a solar panel nearby, and he's still benefiting from that, even though he didn't necessarily install that himself. It still lowered his electrical cost. So, I mean, we're definitely seeing movement on the solar panel part in the industry as well. But I think it's just interesting. Camping World, I know, is investing in the electric RV idea. So it'll be interesting to see how long it is before we actually see a fully functional like electric RV coming down the road, which, I mean, that'll be kind of interesting to see. We'll have to see how long it takes before they get one.
Well, I'm sure Gene will see it first.
If we're lucky, I sure hope so.
Gene,
go ahead, Ben.
Are you a Good Sam member?
Yes, we are.
Do they have do they denote parks that have electric chargers yet in their guide?
I believe they do. I think the last time they came through in the spring, or even the year before, it was marked down that the Tesla chargers were there.
Okay.
That's something I should go back and check. But I know they're very interested in them and wanted to know.
Okay. I know for the first year this year in the KOA directory, Campgrounds America directory, the campgrounds that have EV charging available will be designated that way. So it's they're baby steps right now, and the experience could be vastly different depending on the campground, whether they've got what level. Maybe you ought to mention that, Gene, those different levels of charging stations that we alluded to earlier. What's the most cost-effective way for somebody, a campground owner that wants to get started? What should they do first?
So real simply, there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and it has to do with the speed of the charge. And it's the fast charger is, I think, quickly going to be something that people want, especially if they're out on the road and it's an in-between stop. With a park, you may not necessarily have to do the quick charge because people are going to be there for an extended period of time. So they got plenty of time to hook up to either the tier 1 or the tier 2 charge. There's just so many different little things that we're learning about on this. So there's different adapters and there's different connections for all the different vehicles, and they're slowly coalescing around a particular adapter for the cars to charge. So that's going to be another thing that park owners are going to want to be aware of. What cars are coming in and what will they use? There's going to be a lot of places where parks where a Tesla charging system is not, they're not going to come in. There's just not enough activity there. But the Teslas are going to come and they're going to want to get charged. So they're going to need adapters to hook into those electric chargers. I think just taking a look back, or taking a 30,000 foot look, We know that electrification of the fleet is coming, and it's going to continue to evolve over the next few years. What park owners can do is start to think now about what it's going to take to give the guest what they want.
Mm.
And in some cases, it's going to be a heavy lift with increasing the amount of electricity service to the park and redistributing it. And in other cases, there may be options and opportunities to just bring one drop and have it in a central part of the park where guests can come up and charge. It'll be a novelty for a short period of time, just like your flip phone was, but quickly it's going to become an essential like your iPhone is. So the period of time between flip phone and essential iPhone was I'll say 10 to 15 years. Somebody can correct me on that, but it happened. Relatively speaking, it happened very quickly. And as the products are available, the cars, the tow vehicles, those trucks, the needs are going to be there. And taking a little bit of time now to try to suss out what you're going to need in order to address that guest request. Now's a good time. Talk to park owners, find out what they're doing, and make it happen.
You probably don't want to be the last campground in a competitive market to look this over.
No, no. And I would imagine most things start on the coast and then they kind of move themselves inward. We don't have very many Teslas where I live here in Michigan, at least in the area I live in. Maybe in the, northern part of Michigan, there may be a few more. But,
Let me point out clearly, you're ground zero for combustion vehicles. Okay,
yeah,
so that is
yep.
not a fair example.
So, but we're we still see them. There's not that many people with them, but they're still around, which just kind of indicates that people are interested in them. There's a lot of big trucks where I
Yeah.
live, and so when you see a Tesla vehicle driving around, it's kind of an odd thing, but everybody's interested in them. I'd love to have an electric vehicle down the road, get away from the gas prices.
Well,
Yeah.
and
So,
if you take away the range limitations that they're
yep.
working on, and you've got everything I've read says that the performance of an electronic vehicle is so advanced. I mean, if you stomp your foot on a Tesla, I hear it snaps your head back.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever driven or been in a Tesla.
No.
If you ever get the opportunity, go, definitely take it. And just what Mike said, I mean, it's alarming how quickly it gets up to speed. You're just not used to it. You're in a car, you're thinking engine, you're thinking accelerator. Well, this thing moves so fast, and it really is shocking in some respects, but fun. And you're gonna see that when the trucks come out. And you're going to see people realize that, wow, the acceleration on this thing is amazing, and that's gonna create a lot of sales pretty quick.
They are going to have to invent some sort of sound thing to where I can get that realistic engine sound, though. Those things are way too quiet when they pull up to the stoplight.
That's you, Ben, but I don't know if you got kids, but your kids won't give a darn.
Yeah, I'm sure Ben was one of those kids that put the cards in his bicycle spokes.
Yeah.
I still like the sound of those, the older 60, 70 cars when they pull up to the stoplights, and I'm going to miss that kind of. But yeah, maybe the newer generation won't care.
So Gene, you've got the 20 terminals outside your Chevron station right now, right beside the campground. What's next for your operation as far as e-vehicles go? I mean, is it going to be something that happens this year, next year, 2 years down the road?
Yeah, we're talking right now with a couple of different providers to see what we can get, and it's probably going to be half a dozen, if not 10, electrical vehicle chargers for other makes that would be adaptable for just about anything, including Tesla. And then the idea is that if we can own them, possibly getting some grant money to offset the cost of them. I'm told the DC fast charges are about $100,000 plus or minus to have it ready to go. So that's a little bit of a lift. And if we can get the cost down, then the plan would be to use those low carbon fuel standard credits to help offset the cost of it and create an income stream to pay for them over time.
And
Yeah.
what's the status of your solar field? Is that going to be something that's going to be seen there in the next couple of years?
No, we've got it. It's in. We've got
Oh.
4 acres of solar that powers the operation here. Of course, it doesn't do 100%. We're somewhere in the high 80s, low 90s of offsetting our electrical usage back to the grid, and it's great. You talked earlier about some of the offsetting rebates that you can get from depreciation credits to federal tax credit, and it's going to take us. It's in that 3 to 5 year time frame to pay it off, but man, everybody loves a low utility bill, and that's what we've seen here over the last year.
Yeah, there are a lot of park owners out there that, you're not 100%, but I'm sure they'd love to have 80 to 90%. That's quite a big chunk of your electric bill. So,
It really is.
well, I think we'll wrap up. We didn't get Mike on, but maybe we can bring him back and we can discuss this further a few months from now or something. I don't think this issue's going away, obviously. So, unfortunately, I guess we must have gotten our times confused or something happened to Mike. Hopefully he's doing okay. But thanks, Gene, for coming on and for giving us your perspective.
And I'd remind folks that Gene is going to be speaking at that ARVIC convention.
Yeah.
So if you're planning on attending that ARVIC convention, make sure you stop in and get the lowdown from Gene, because things are changing quick.
Yeah, and I believe Wade Elliott's going to be taking part in that. Gene, I know there was another person, and then I know Christine Taylor is going to be there. I think she's going to be doing some legal stuff near the end of that session. I can't remember the third person, but it looks like Mike's joining us now.
He was off by an hour.
I was only off by an hour. That wasn't terrible for me.
Well, Mike, I guess, Mike, Gas, do you want to keep going on, or?
Yeah, we can wrap it up or do something else. I am so sorry. I got tied up on another gig.
That's okay. We were just kind of wrapping up, but it's okay. Gene was just telling us about his operation there in California. I guess, Mike, I was reading that article that you were kind of quoted in last week about the solar power in the RV industry. And yes. I guess what's your perspective on electric vehicles? I guess what they're doing in the industry.
Here's the thing. I am working on what I would call a holistic approach to this, because the electric vehicle by itself isn't the whole thing. The electric vehicle is part of it, but lithium to make the batteries is part of it. Where you get the energy from to charge these things is part of it. How you distribute it is part of it. So I'm working on all the bits and pieces of how this could work. And in fact, one of the things that I am working on is this idea of creating this as not only a program for RVers, but also for middle school and tech schools in terms of actual information for these guys, because they have to take some kind of electrical course, but they're kind of silly classes. They might as well learn about renewable energy and electric vehicles and such. I think that the manufacturers now of the electric cars and trucks are kind of ahead of the curve a bit much, because we still don't have all the rest of this stuff in place. But the motor technology and battery technology is actually pretty good. But RVs would have to be built more streamlined in order to be able to take advantage of electric tow vehicles. Or I've seen a number of them that I've been offered a chance to play with that have the RVs themselves have built-in batteries and their own traction motors in the wheels. So it can, in fact, push itself.
Mike, you mentioned you've got one of the best jobs ever because you get to play with everybody else's toys all the time. And have you had a lot of experience with EVs out there yet?
Not yet. The two that I've had, Volkswagen loaned me an ID4 for 8 weeks, and that's a little SUV, which was a ton of fun. And I towed a, uh, let's see, I guess it's a Safari Condo Alto, one of those teardrops that folds down with that. That was really interesting. Plus one of the extreme outdoor little pods. I also had the Ford loaned me their Power Boost hybrid, their gasoline electric hybrid for 2 weeks. And I towed a GeoPro G19 FB little toy hauler,
Yeah.
to Indiana and back a few times and up and down the coast a few times. So I've learned a lot about all of the nuances of what it takes to charge them up and how much of a cost to charge them up and how long it takes. There's a few things that are really silly. So, for example, I have not found a single fast charging station that you can pull in any truck with a trailer behind it without going in the parking lot and dumping your trailer and then going and charging up your truck and then going and hooking your trailer back up, which is not something you really want to do.
So is that the case at your park, Gene?
Pardon me?
Is that the case in your park that if somebody showed up with a trailer, would they have to unhitch in order to charge?
I thought Mike had a great comment. I'm taking notes here now. No, we're gonna have to get a long cord or a big parking space. I mean, that's one of those functional things.
Right. It's tricky, and I've talked to the guys at Electrify America and KOA, about this, and I'm talking fast chargers that can charge your thing up in 30 or 40 minutes. That is the real problem. I have, people say they're out there. I looked at dozens of them. I could not find one anywhere, even though some of these are right smack in the middle of like a Walmart or Sam's Club parking lot where there's literally 5,000 spaces. And they could have easily just gone off and say, okay, I'm just going to make one of these a pull through, EV trailer thing. They don't even seem to be aware that this is a thing.
Mm. So as far as the campground owners go, Mike, where's the tipping point? Where do they start seeing so many EVs that it just has to make sense for them to do something?
I think the initial thing will be EV tows. And so the vehicles that you tow behind it. And if you've been watching any of the news streams here, Ford just released a patent that they're working on to allow you to charge up your towed vehicle while you're pulling behind whatever it is you're driving. And so it would act like kind of an exhaust brake, but with electrons behind you. So if that's the case, that solves that kind of an issue. But we have campgrounds, of course, they have legal issues with not being able to just mark up the price of electricity per kilowatt hour, because then you would be a provider, electrical provider, and you can't be that. And so they, you can do it like a service charge kind of a thing. But again, this is all in the legal implications of it. I'm more interested in how long does it take you to charge it up. And you can, in fact, I'm trying to remember the name of the company. They're sending me a portable charger that can be up to, I think 40 amps or so from a pedestal. So you can plug it into a regular 50 amp thing, and then you can throttle it down and say, I want 40 amps or 30 amps or 20 amps or 10 amps to go into my vehicle. And then you just kind of say, I would like it to be charged up in, say, 10 hours. So what that does is reduce the peak load on the campground pedestal itself, but you still got to pay. Somebody's got to pay for this electricity. And you do. And it depends. At the cost of 12 or 15 cents per kilowatt hour, it is still about 1/3 of the price of doing this with gasoline, which I think is pretty amazing. I did real numbers here, and I gathered my own empirical data. I don't believe anything that any marketing person tells me. I just, I go run the numbers.
Yeah, don't some of the home chargers now for EVs have it's almost like setting your cell phone on that charging pad? Isn't there a
yes, there is in
charger?
fact. Yeah, in fact, I've been promised one of these. And call with contactless non-plug-in charging or whatever. Okay, well I know I can't remember the name, but I know how it works. So you have a pad that you can put down on the ground that's maybe a foot wide by 2 feet long. And then you have a matching interface inside of under the vehicle. And so I think BMW may have it as an option this year. And it will charge 10 or 11 kilowatts at something like a 93 to 95% efficiency. So what it really means is you could pull your vehicle right over top of this thing, in your wherever your front yard, not front yard, but in your driveway or house or whatever, and then it would automatically sync up, and it would realistically 12. If you could say get 10 kilowatts for 10 hours is 100 kilowatt hours. That would pretty much charge up that would certainly more than charge up my 75 kilowatt hour battery in my basic little Volkswagen, or that would do most of the charge on, let's say, a Ford Lightning, all electric pickup truck overnight in 10 hours.
So comparing what's going on in Europe to what's going on here, are the U.S. car makers way behind here?
Oh yeah, we're way behind. We're way behind from promotion and way behind in technology. One of the problems, of course, and it's not really a bad thing, one of the issues is in America, we have got much more stringent testing procedures for crash worthiness and all kinds of other things. But they are now, you look at the big automakers, and these guys have jumped in with both feet. You can see the commercials for Ford that just came out in the last day or two, and you see the stuff for GM, their skateboard battery system. These guys are all in. However, none of them addressed where do you charge these things? Where do we get the end?
Oh, T disappeared.
He's right about that GM and Ford haven't really jumped in on the charging side. And that's what Tesla did. They put resources and put them out there, because what they were getting at not the showroom, but when the people were talking about buying a Tesla, tremendous range anxiety. What happens if I go somewhere and I get stuck?
Wait, am I here? Am I back?
So
I'm back in the show.
Yeah, Gene was just telling us about what your last comment about how Tesla had to deal with range anxiety and everything at first. People were scared because they didn't want to get stranded.
And they just put the resources out to put in the station so that question would not be an issue, and to say, hey, buy the car, you can go anywhere, fast charge.
The thing that's really, really interesting about Tesla is that I found at one of our little, towns that's over, it's basically over, St. Michael's, Maryland, is, over on the shore kind of a thing on the bay. Tesla put in a bunch of free charging stations, and right next to them, they also put in standard charging stations for non-Tesla cars. So Tesla installed non-Tesla, destination chargers, because they want to make everybody happy. Maybe this is the guilt that they're feeling from some of the stuff that they've done, but I think it's a good thing. The more of these, the merrier, truly.
So Mike, Tesla partnered, I think it's with EVgo, one of the other guys or whatever. So now they're going to do more of what you're talking about. Have the Tesla facility, but also have the other EVgo's and potentially adapters that go between both.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. And I've got a couple people promised me a variety of these adapters. And remember, everybody says, well, I've got.
Oh, yep. He's gone again.
He must be on a campground.
Yeah. We might have to invite Mike back.
I think we could definitely do a part 2 here, Ben. There's certainly enough knowledge there. And and we could also bring in some of the chain people, I think, that are dealing with this in a bigger way to try and encourage this. Exactly what Gene's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike?
I'm so sorry. We're just losing connection everywhere.
I think Mike and I had talked about maybe inviting you back here down the road so we can talk more about this. So
yeah, and I can get on my big computer with the hardwired connection and everything. I'm just doing this from a cell phone right now.
So, but yeah, I think we're looking at wrapping this up. But thanks,
Okay.
Mike, for joining us late. And I mean, you gave us quite a bit of details even in the 10 minutes you were here. So I know we'd be excited to have you come back and talk more. So
Very good. Keep
And
me posted.
yeah, and Mike Sokol writes for rvtravel.com also.
Yep.
So keep tabs on that website because I think that's also a great spot to stay up on this topic.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm posting everything there. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep. Thanks. And thanks,
Thanks, Gene.
for sticking it out with us an additional 10, 15 minutes or whatever. And you were very valuable too, just your insight as a park owner. And
Absolutely.
Next week we'll be talking about glamping. I'm gonna be at the Glamping Show USA with David Course. We're gonna be coming from there live, and hopefully we have another park owner on to talk about what they're doing at their park as far as glamping goes and some of the trends we're seeing there. So thanks everyone for taking part, and look forward to seeing everyone next week. So.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.